than if it had been kind of stoic, then tears. But to see him kind of like on the edge of that the whole time was really powerful and intense. I saw the movie at like 9 p.m., which probably made it feel more overwhelming.
I think it especially works when you consider how like frustrated he is, because like the moment before like he actually starts crying is the moment where he kind of learns the truth about his father, and it almost feels like he's more frustrated that he's not more angry with him or not more, sorrowful that he's denied this version of his father to himself. So yeah, like it kind of like builds and builds so that by the time we actually do get the tear there, it's not, the cliche like, oh, what are these things coming out of my eyes? It's like it actually resonates there. It feels earned.
His response when his dad tells him, like, when his dad basically says, like, this was all that mattered to me, I didn't really care about you, and he just goes, like, kind of with a resolved, I know, Dad. Like, man, that part totally wrecked me. Just his delivery of that this is something that he's made peace with, and he helps his dad out of the space station after that. It's heartbreaking, and Brad Pitt's performance in that moment is
amazing. Yeah, especially like the understated performance
sort of
by Tommy Lee Jones there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that there's sort of, it's not really a reluctance. Like when he throughout the whole film, like Brad Pitt, he definitely portrays or expresses that he's not doing this because he wants to or because he doesn't want to. It's just what he has to do, and he carries that throughout. Like all those little moments, like every action beat, every plot point, where he'd be perfectly justified saying, you know what, screw this. This is no more. He's going forward not because of a personal connection or even duty. It's just like, this is what I do. It's almost like there's something controlling him. And I really love the details. That tiny scene, it's really stupid, but I just latched onto it. I think it's when he's taking the shuttle from the moon to the next way station, and I want to say flight attendant, but that sounds incorrect considering we're talking about interplanetary travel. But the attendant offers him a towel for a couple $100, and he's like, "Yeah, no problem." Or I'm sorry, a blanket. And it's like those little details, kind of like it really reminded me of Kubrick's 2001 with, like, the floating pen when the guy's sleeping in zero G. Like those little tiny details that just help make it so much more immersive. And adding to those like incredible performances. I mean, Brad Pitt definitely stole it because it's definitely the Brad Pitt show. But holy shit, Tommy Lee Jones, out of nowhere, it's like, oh, that's right, he's an actor, and like a really good actor, because he's been slumming it in all these bit parts and silly roles where he gets to play like a tired old guy from Texas. And it's like, oh, that's right, he's got gravitas when he wants to.
Man, they hand him like a huge meaty steak by the end there, because you build up so much on him, and then once you actually get to him, yeah, it is heartbreaking when you see him, and that he makes like that cold realization. Yeah, the details too, especially consider like when they get to the moon base and they show very briefly how commercialized it is. Like there's a subway in the background. They don't really mention much of it. They just say, "Oh yeah, tourists come here," and then move on to just getting to the next point. It's just tiny little details like that. They don't focus too much on, and like I said, because it makes the world feel lived in. Especially that meditation contemplation room where it's just like scenes of like the ocean and stuff like that, and always it looks like it's just projected on there with like very kind of like almost like low res projectors. There's something kind of like retro throwback-ish, but also kind of like believable that it be at this, off Earth science station, that it would feel a little bit, cold and rustic and a little bit low tech, and where like the lighting feels like intimidating there. So just yeah, every little bit, the way they assemble the space stations and the science vessels, just everything about it just breathes with like like its own world that you don't have to spend too much time explaining either. So okay, so we'll move on to, like, this might be like a trickier question, because I'm almost wondering if we already answered these, but what do you feel was an underrated film of 2019? So, in other words, what's a film that might not be your favorite, but it didn't really get that much attention, didn't really get many awards or box office? So basically, what did we all miss So yeah, Kelsey, do you have an answer for that?
Yes. So it's called Fast Color. It was directed by Julia Hart, starring Gugu Mbatha Raw. Part of the reason that it went extremely under the radar is that the distribution of it was kind of a mess. It actually premiered at a festival in at South by Southwest, I think, in 2018, and then was wide released in 2019. But I don't remember the number. It was like crazy low. It opened at like 50 theaters nationwide. And it is a very like small budget, very kind of, it feels very simple, and that's odd because it's technically a superhero movie. It's a superhero movie slash family drama about this family of women who all have these very odd powers that take a while to kind of understand in the movie. And the main character, Ruth, is really struggling with hers. They're causing really unfortunate physical reactions in herself and the world around her. It's also kind of a subtle dystopian setting. They're in a massive drought, and it feels very low budget, but in a grounded way, not in a cheap looking way. And I'm not a huge visual effects person. Like I don't necessarily notice when things are really good or really bad, except for cats. But the visual effects in this movie, for the budget that it seems like it had, are just gorgeous. And there's all, as the title would suggest, there's these brilliant colors, these blues and purples and reds. It's a really gorgeous movie and family drama. And it's about kind of this family legacy that's linked together in these maternal bonds. It's so gorgeous, and almost no one saw it, including myself, until it was on Hulu, which it is now. And I would highly recommend it. I don't remember if that's one we have a clip of. It might be.
Sorry, yes, we have it.
The world's gonna die. I can feel it coming. And I think about Ruth. How does she survive out there on her own, as broken as she is? Lila, this is your mother.
Does she have...
Yes, but not like yours.
Our abilities can't fix things. If something's broken, it stays broken.
Lila's different. She can see the colors.
What do they look like? I've never seen them.
It's like an echo. Moving over everything fast like a race.
It's gotten harder for us to stay in hiding.
I know. There's not much time.
You cannot be putting her in danger again.
I'm not leaving.
This woman can affect the energy of the earth. Ruth, we can help you. There are tests we can run.
A new world is coming.
I'm not scared anymore.
Oh, just watching the trailer makes me want to watch the movie again. It's a cool 90 minutes, which is a big selling point for me these days, especially. Yeah, Fast Color is a fantastic movie, and it's available, I think, definitely on Hulu, possibly also on Amazon Prime Video.
Mm-hmm. I believe it's going on to a series, I believe. I think I heard tell that
Is
it's going to
it?
be developed
Oh,
into
that
a
would be
television
so.
series.
Oh, that's exciting. Oh, well, sign me up.
I hope it is, because I think it's kind of taken off. Yeah, because yeah, it did have a very small opening, but as a
Yeah.
as people have found out about this film, it's kind of become a bit more of like a cult hit. Like everyone's been promoting it, so it's a little bit easier to find, and everyone's been kind of like raving about it a little bit more as it came out. So yeah, it seems like it's building up on Steam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, Ryan. Do you have an answer for most underrated film 2019?
Yeah, for sure. My choice, I'm gonna go with Sword of Trust, which is a Lynn Sheldon film. She did Hump Day and My Sister's Sister, and it's this micro budget indie, but it has some fairly well known actors. I mean, they've used most of the budget for the acting, and the premise of the film is that there's this couple. And they inherit this sword from one of their super racist grandfathers, and the sword turns out to be this artifact that racists believe proves that the South won the Civil War, and they go to a pawn shop to basically get help selling it because they see that people are willing to pay like $40,000 for it, so they want to take them for that. And none of the story really matters. It's all in the performances. The two like it's a 4-person lead, but especially Michaela Watkins and Mark Maron are just unbelievable. And the way that Lynn Sheldon directs, she lets her actors improvise almost everything, and you get just this incredible energy. Like it's like super short. Like I think it's like an hour and 20 minutes. But like you just want to sit with these characters and watch them riff off of each other and comment on how horrifying this world is that they've entered, like all the time. I think we have a clip for it. Yeah.
What you were looking at
Yes.
is a genuine relic that supports the actual truth, which is the South won the war.
Okay. The South won the war?
That's right. This is something you want to keep under your hat till you're ready to
Seems
not
like
keep
pretty
it
big
under your
news.
Best way to do this is through concrete evidence.
Is this Antique Roadshow for racists?
Up to $50,000.
God damn it.
What's the deal?
70-30 sounds fair to me.
Please don't touch.
I can't touch the tag.
Don't touch the tag.
Honey, 70-30. Is it 70 for us? No. No deal.
30 for us. No deal.
There can be other offers on this, because the word's out.
Word's out.
Came here looking for something.
Uh-huh.
Heard you have it.
Can we narrow it down a little?
We're looking for a sword.
All right.
A sword.
Why was that so hard?
It wasn't hard.
Wasn't hard.
Why did we have to take that route to get there?
30 seconds to get there. It
Didn't
wasn't
take
that long.
Let's just be on the same page. We're just trying to sell this thing for a lot of money, and that's that.
Bam.
This is definitely how people die. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're capable of.
We're in this together. Me, you, the two ladies. We just got to get that $40,000. I'm so hard right now. I can barely keep my mind straight.
Wait a minute. Are you using that word right?
Down in country like this, wind up in a ditch dead and nobody'd ever find you.
You spend a lot of time thinking, like, how can these people think like this,
No,
right?
you're right, man.
We're in the brain of that.
Yeah, we're about to find out.
Apparently it's carpeted.
So yeah, I mean it's almost entirely people sitting around talking to each other and riffing off of each other, but I mean they just give such magnetic performances, and the way that Lynn Shelton directs, like she just lets them do that, and it leads to some surprisingly emotional places. So I think that's one that it's I think the only way right now that you can watch it is to buy it on Amazon, or to like, yeah, I think that's the only way, but I thought it was worth it.
That's very surprising. Oh wow, I think I've seen that one. I got to check that one out. All right, well, we'll keep going here. Aaron, do you want to go?
Yeah, that's right. Underrated. There's so many, and I'm trying to find one obscure. I guess not really obscure, but I think the reason why it was overlooked was the delivery method. But it's Dolomite Is My Name, which is a biopic or biopic if you say it like that, but don't say it like that. It's biopic about Rudy Ray Moore, the comedian who got big really late 70s ish, spilled a bit into the 80s for the character of Dolomite, which, oh man, it's a true story. Dolomite, if you're unfamiliar, is a kung fu secret agent, part-time pimp. It's the Dolomite movies are insane. It's great, but it's really about Rudy Ray Moore trying to make it. He's past his prime. He was never really that good to begin with until he starts using kind of like, we call them the dozens, but like these rhyming insults that were popular around black neighborhoods way back when, and he kind of brought those to the forefront of his act with this character Dolomite. And then he wants to make a movie. The cast is insane. Kind of like I mentioned Tommy Lee Jones, like remembered he was an actor in Ad Astra. Like Eddie Murphy remembered, like, oh, that's right. At one point, I was legit the funniest man in comedy, and he like brings it back, and he has an incredible cast behind him. Oh boy, I should have taken some notes, but let's see. There's Keegan-Michael Key, Wesley Snipes, Titus Burgess, Craig Robinson, Martin Short, Chris Rock, Snoop Dogg. Basically, it was sort of like you know how sometimes like not on the level people talk about like, oh, like there's like these secret black meetings. Like this is the meeting. Like that's what Dolomite Is My Name is. It's insanely funny. It's definitely not for kids. It's hardcore. It's a hard R and it earns it. But everyone brings their AAA game. And it's all true. Like they didn't really embellish that much, and they even do that beautiful thing I love sometimes in biopics where they actually do kind of side by sides over the credits, where the scenes that were so outlandish during the biopic, you see that actually they were kind of holding back a little bit because this is what Rudy Ray Moore is actually making these people do. It's fantastic. I believe it's still on Netflix right now. It was a Netflix film, so it was released on Netflix. I don't believe it got a theatrical release. So if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. It is hilarious. It's just so sharp, and it's Eddie Murphy. I mean, if you're an older nerd like myself of a certain seasoning, remember like the Eddie Murphy from like Nutty Professor and like even problematic Eddie Murphy back in Raw and 48 Hours and stuff like that. But it's that Eddie Murphy. It's not the Eddie Murphy of like that weird like dream fantasy stuff or Shrek. Although Shrek's pretty groovy. I mean, he was okay as Donkey and Mushu, but this is like Eddie Murphy going back to being Eddie Murphy, like the comedy actor who like pushes all the boundaries and gives 0 Fs, and it's a great cast. Did I mention that I really dig this movie? It's super groovy.
Yeah, it's like Eddie Murphy just basically came alive again in like a film that just handed him such a meaty role.
Yes. It's
not to mention like considering
so
like how
it was such odd
kind of like low role that Eddie. Yeah, go ahead through you, Mark.
Oh, I agree 100%. It's he's been doing so much work that just sort of like, oh, okay, I guess he wanted to buy another vacation home, so that's why he took that role. And this one is kind of like, oh, like again, like he's like, wait a second, I'm Eddie Murphy. I can actually be really, really good if I want to. I'll try it. And he picked this small little Netflix film to do it in, and he brought again a massive cast, and all of them are fantastic.
Yeah, in particular, Wesley Snipes, I really enjoyed for how understated a role he has. It's basically, it felt like he was basically just like the straight man in this, and he plays it perfectly. Like, there's just like that perfect moment where he just turns to his camera and it's like, "Can you make this look good?" And just like, there's no shot that can make that look good. Just perfect lines like that. Well, so I guess like my favorite underrated film from last year that kind of went under the radar, another comedy was The Art of Self-Defense. This is a film that I was kind of excited for because it was from Riley Stearns, who did a film called Faults, which was a very dry and very kind of like just like frank dark comedy. And The Art of Self-Defense is very much that. The trailers make it kind of seem like it might be like kind of like a Napoleon Dynamite kind of deal, where it's Jesse Eisenberg who's kind of meek and wants to train how to, you know, be like an expert in martial arts at his local dojo. Except once he does, and once he gets involved with the sensei, who won't tell you his name, he just goes by sensei, ends up teaching him not just martial arts, but takes advantage of him of his desire to sort of be more in control and sort of be more manly. And so he starts spinning all these ridiculous, absurd tales and just basically warping his entire personality into being, to make him think that he's being manly, when in truth he actually has a much more sinister motive that kind of like without revealing too much, it kind of harkens to the Faces of Death films. It takes a weird twist towards the end there, but it's just full with tons of just dry and weird comedy, especially because like one of the scenes I just fell out of my seat laughing is there's this they keep mentioning the Grand Master who used to run the dojo, who basically this guy who looks like Al Roker with a rainbow belt on. And they keep talking about him like, you know, he invented his own moves and his own belt, and he could make people's brains blow out the side of their head just with his finger. And you never see this character. You just hear them talk and talk and talk about him. And every time they did, I just fell out of my seat laughing about this. So very explicit, very dry humor here. Huge commentary on, you know, like the nature of like masculinity and manipulating that masculinity into capital gain. And it's just so darkly comedic and just so absurd that I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite comedies of last year, by far. Okay. So let's see here. So kind of gonna open it up a little bit here. I was going to I was gonna go more by genre now, because like I guess we kind of covered most of the genre stuff. I guess we'll jump into something a little more interesting. Like we'll go with horror. Like which particular film from last year that was horror based that you thought was pretty damn good. So we'll start with Kelsey.
Oh wow. Okay, well I feel kind of like I'm cheating and stealing the really obvious pick. But my pick has got to be Us, directed and written by Jordan Peele. It is one of the few horror movies where in the theater I halfway through I was like, I don't know if I can finish this. I am so afraid right now. The scissors imagery really got to me. But yeah, horror movie about a family who is stalked by their own doppelgangers. And it is, because it's Jordan Peele, it's also very funny, often in quite dark ways. But the performances are, of course, fantastic. Lupita Nyong'o, well, everyone in the cast is doing two performances because there's real them and doppelganger them, and Lupita Nyong'o's performance was outstanding. Yeah, I think we have a clip of it. I don't know for sure. Okay, sounds good. Those of you who are easily afraid maybe want to look away for like 2 minutes.
To take the drink out of the bag.
That's a classic right there.
Messing with that ain't no weed.
does I Got Five on it mean?
It's about drugs.
It's not about drugs. It's a dope song. Don't do drugs.
Get in rhythm. There you go. There you go. Can't believe how big Dave got.
Did you hear Gabe got a boat?
He's kidding, right?
He's not kidding.
Hey, I think it's vodka o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Where's Jason?
Jason?
Where were you? I didn't know if you were lost. Stick with me, and I'll keep you safe.
There's a family in our driveway.
It's probably the neighbors. But y'all scared of a family? Hi, can I help you?
Zora, put your shoes on.
If you want to get crazy, we can get crazy. What are you people?
It's us.
They look exactly like us. They think like us. They know where we are. We need to move and keep moving. They won't stop until they kill us. Or we kill them.
Yes. It's been really fascinating talking with friends who have also seen it because the reactions to it can be very different. So like my roommate saw it and was like, "That was so good, and I never want to see it again." And I saw it and immediately wanted to rewatch it, knowing everything I know now. Partly because it might make it a little less terrifying, but also just there's so many things. In particular, the way that Jordan Peele uses visual storytelling in the movie, so many meanings and so much depth to it that I wanted to see it many, many times over to try to pick out all the pieces that I missed the first time. And I felt like there was something else I was going to say about it, but that might actually be it.
Yeah, you mentioned like the humor in it. What I love so much about how Peele can do this, since he kind of comes from comedy, is that it always feels like there's this flow of both like terror and comedy at the same time. It doesn't feel like here's the scene where it's supposed to be funny
Yes.
and here's the scene where it's supposed to be scary. It always feels like there's just that fluctuating where they can just easily go back and forth so effortlessly. Which just works so well with like the rest of like the cinematography, like just the way it's shot. Like I'm never gonna forget like that ending fight sequence. Just all the way he uses like kind of like the creepy like De Palma type shots with just the dioptic shots like just right in front of the faces. It's just I for days I could not get that climactic fight out of my head. I just the soundtrack, the choreography, everything about it just stuck in my craw.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, with the
Right.
comedy and the horror at the same time, it's very funny, and it also doesn't feel like comic relief because there's no relief. You're still very afraid and laughing at the same time, and it's just so masterfully done.
Definitely.
Yeah, Kelsey, I thought we were gonna be buddies. I thought we had this connection. We just met on this panel, and like I loved us because I love Jordan Peele's work. But after I saw it the second time, I had the same question when I saw his previous film, Get Out, which was, man, Jordan Peele's such a great filmmaker. I can't wait until he does a horror movie. Like, he does such great allegory and such great character development, and such great scripts, and like you mentioned, the visual storytelling, and like Us was so amazing on so many levels. A far superior film, in my opinion, to Get Out, especially dealing with like W.E.B. Du Bois' duality of man and like our place in society versus our place that we've chosen, that we're working towards, and there's so much subtext and so much thematic brilliance. But it was just sort of like, okay. I mean, again, it wasn't a bad film. It's just I walked into it because I saw the trailer, the clip we just saw, and I was like, oh yes, now we get, because Get Out, I thought Get Out was a great thriller. And then I went to Us like, yeah, Jordan's fine, because Jordan Peele is kind of famously known for being a huge horror fan himself. And so I was like, yes, now we got Jordan Peele doing horror. And then walking out, it's like, well, it was good. It was a brilliant film. It just wasn't horror. It was kind of like a lot of the other horror films that kind of got churned out in 2019. That's how it felt. It was better than most of them. I just felt like I walked in expecting like horror and walked out like, oh, like yeah, it had some disturbing sequences. But, like that trailer, it again, just my opinion, and I respect you. Wait, where are you? You're on that side. There you are. Like I respect you. Nope, you're this side. Nope, there you are. Yeah, you're awesome. Kelsey, you're super groovy. But I was just like, oh, Us. It was like this close. It could have been so scary, and instead it was really, really awesome, which I guess isn't a letdown. It was, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I honestly, some of my friends often tell me that the things that I'm scared by are bizarre. Like I have a very, very lasting fear of Killer Bob from Twin Peaks that like defies. Like he's supposed to be scary. I don't think he's supposed to be scary to the level that like if I think about him, I feel like I'm going to cry.
I mean,
So
no
that could
judgment
definitely
here.
be playing
Trust
a
me, no
part.
judgment. Not at all. Like I'm still scared of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Like I will share that with the whole everyone watching. So no judgment.
Well, Ryan, do you think you can top Us?
So I was really hoping nobody said Us, because that was but so I don't have a clip for this one because I was planning on doing Us, but so I saw this in theaters in 2020, but Google says it's 2019, so I think that counts. Color Out of Space, which is a H.P. Lovecraft adaptation starring Nicolas Cage. And I feel like in the last few years, I guess they're starting to let Nicolas Cage make good, entertaining films again. Because I feel like now every year, and it's always something in kind of the horror super genre where he can really play into like his craziest impulses, and it actually makes sense within the story. But it's just it starts out as kind of this very B horror kind of faithful adaptation, and it turns into like full on John Carpenter like body horror, like just nightmare, disgusting, like hard R-rated crazy horror movie, kind of in the same vein. I mean, to use the other Nicolas Cage movie that was awesome, that was recent, as Mandy, but it's I was surprised by how horrified I was by it. It reminded me a lot of kind of that first time that you see The Thing, and just kind of that fascinated disgust that you feel. But I really enjoyed that.
Nice. Yeah, that's fairly
And
fairly
yeah,
recent. I think
I guess
that
I should.
came out on theatrically. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It was the theatrical release when I saw it was in
I've
January
got a
of 2020.
trailer if you want to keep talking.
Oh yeah. So I guess I should probably mention what the story's about instead of just describing how I felt about it. So the premise is that there is an asteroid that crashes into this family's backyard and slowly it just starts changing the plants and then the animals and then them in ways that they start not being aware of, but become more and more obvious as time goes on and more grotesque. I mean, it's kind of a very obvious climate change allegory, but also just this hard R-rated horror movie that that I don't know, that you don't see done this well very often. So I think that we have a clip coming up here from the trailer for it. But I mean, again, just like with Mandy, I feel like you start to see these movies and you you get an idea for kind of how good Nicolas Cage can be in his element when he's doing projects that actually are good fits for him instead of just taking a paycheck to cash in on his name.
Okay, trailer's coming up.
Yeah. All right. So, yep. So.
Look at this.
All those years in the big city, we finally got out. We're living the dream.
Maybe it is a dream.
Then everything just blew up. Big flash, like a pink light. Or actually, I don't even know what color it was. It wasn't like any color I'd ever seen before.
Looks like a meteorite. You think it's radioactive? I mean, it's from space, right?
Meteorites are generally no more dangerous than ordinary rocks.
How can something that big just disappear? Did you plant those?
No.
Ward, you come here for a sec.
Oh, God.
What are you doing?
Shh. It's talking to me. Who's talking to you?
A man in the well.
It's in the static, it's in the moisture. It's in here, is out there. And what's out there is in here now.
Everything's under control.
Why are you so in denial? That thing from the meteorite changes everything around it.
It's just the color. But it burns.
Do you believe me now?
I don't know what I believe anymore. Everything's gonna be A-okay.
So yeah, I know that it released here in theaters in 2020, but I guess there were some screenings of it in 2019. And I'm gonna cheat because I think I didn't really like any other horror movie besides Us that I saw last year. So I think that, but I really enjoyed that. So I'll go with that.
All right. That was good. Well, I really enjoyed Mandy, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing that film. All right. So
it's a
yeah, do you
lot
want to
of
go
fun.
on to Aaron? Definitely.
Oh, yeah. So for horror, I'm kind of torn because like the film snob in me has one choice, and then like just the horror nerd, geeky part has a different choice, and they're very, very different films. So I'm just gonna cheat and do like a tie between the two. So the film nerd in me that just like loves film as a craft and an art form, The Lighthouse I thought was just a brilliant piece of cinema. It was something that we haven't seen in a while. It was original and fresh, but at the same time, there's this odd familiarity with it. I mean, it basically just played on the themes of isolation and uncertainty and clandestine motives. But it was just such a gorgeous film because the entire thing is shot in not 4:3, that's television, but it was
I'm
shot
gonna
in
look
the
for the
old school
trailer.
ratio, so it's more school. Oh, super groovy. It's Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. That's pretty much it. I think there are 3 other actors that have very, very small parts, but basically they play lighthouse keepers that are at a lighthouse and a storm comes in. And Willem Dafoe is kind of like the old salty lighthouse keeper forever. Robert has kind of a shady past and he's a newbie on the block. But slowly, as the storm rolls in, it's kind of like this descent into madness, and you don't really know what's real and what's not real. Um, Again, it's gorgeously shot in like this high contrast silver tone black and white, and they do a lot with imagery. I think I remember reading some of the interviews and stuff. They actually built a lighthouse so it could be period specific. And Willem Dafoe, who's always a phenomenal actor, this is probably in my top 3 of his performances of all time. Like, he is so good, and you really don't know where he's going to go next. He just keeps you guessing, and anticipation. Like, he's like those old silent films where you know the guy with the mustache and the top hat tying the woman to the train tracks is up to no good, but you don't know exactly what he's going to do until the Lone Ranger shows up. Like, that's Willem Dafoe. That is a horrible comparison to make. Actually, now I'm saying it out loud, but Willem Dafoe is great. He is one, and then Robert Pattinson, who is definitely like working his ass off to prove that he's more than just a sparkly vampire. Like, oh my God, that was an incredible performance. And again, it's really just the 2 of them for the entire duration of the film,
The
minus
trailer's
some
ready
very,
whenever
very,
you
very
want it.
small appearances. Oh, super great. And here's a clip. Oh, I've always wanted to say that. Here's a clip.
Tell me, what's a timberman want with being a wiki?
Just looking to earn a living, just like any man. Starting new.
On the run. Keeping secrets, are you?
No, sir.
Why don't you spill your beans? Why don't you spill your beans? Why don't you spill your beans? How long have we been on this rock? 5 weeks? 2 days? Help me to recollect.
Oh, yes. Like the trailer doesn't do it justice. I mean, trailers never do anything justice, but like it's such a great film. I mean, it is. I mean, yes, it's very like film snobby because it's black and white and it's in an odd format or unorthodox format, and they're talking like it's 19th century, but it is so well done and the imagery is it's gorgeous and repulsive at the same time. It kind of gives you that Stanley Kubrick feel, like in Clockwork Orange when Alex is walking through the record shop and it has happy music, but he has that evil look on his face. So it's like that conflict of emotions and what's going on. That whole movie, the entire film of The Lighthouse is like that's the sense I had watching it. It was just like, oh, this is gorgeous, and I don't want to watch it, but I do want to watch it. It was so great, and it was scary as hell. Like some of those images just stick with you, and some of them aren't even like horror movie scary. They're just kind of like, I don't want to see that kind of scary. There's a lot, I guess. Warning for the younger viewers: there's a lot of masturbation in the film, like not graphic. They don't show like the whole shillelagh being shellacked, but you get the gist way more often than you thought you would. Yes. But yeah, that's my art house pick.
It
as
is
far
the very
as horror goes. That's the film snob. I was like, yes, I do have taste. I'm just trying to
it
redeem
is the
myself
very
from this
definition, I
Death
think, of a
poster.
very
That's all.
very experimental film.
Oh, absolutely. Like the fact that
Cheerleaders.
like the plot isn't really even a plot. It's just kind of like it's like a character piece or like a study on like what would happen in this scenario, and it just unfolds and you're just kind of watching it. And I think that also adds to like the unease, because there isn't that traditional 3-act structure that we're used to in terms of like, oh, okay, well, at some point we're going to find out X and then this will happen. Here's the climax. It just kind of keeps pushing and pushing. And then when it does finally come to the climax and the ending, it's just like, oh, it hits you. It gets you like those old commercials about like, I think it was like paste picante sauce. Like it gets you here. It gets you right here. Like that's what the Lighthouse does. It gets you here. So yes. So see, this Death Proof poster is just
That's so
decoration.
visceral,
I do
too.
have some tastes. Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of texture and just like, it leaves a taste in your mouth. I won't say a good taste, but there's definitely there's something on the palate after you're done watching it.
Yes, you feel like you are smelling what they're smelling,
very,
which is
very
not very
psychosexual.
pleasant, but
Yes. Yes. And then not to over talk, but like my tie going the opposite direction was a film called Ready or Not. It was basically about a woman who marries into a wealthy family and finds out on the wedding night they play this horrific game of hide and seek.
We do have Ready or Not.
With deadly consequences. Oh wow, look at that. And here's a clip.
We're gonna start the count. Good luck.
I can't believe that in half an hour, I will be a part of the Ladomus Gaming Dynasty Empire.
Dominion. We prefer Dominion.
I honestly can't wait to be a part of your family.
There's just one more thing. And then you are officially part of the family. So, at midnight, you have to play a game.
Why
It's just something we do when someone new joins the family.
a game? What game? Hide and seek? Are we really gonna play that?
The rules are simple. You can hide anywhere. We then try to find you.
So there's no way for me to win, right?
I mean, stay hidden till dawn.
No, thank you.
Good luck.
What the hell is this? How old is this thing?
I know you're in here.
Oh, Jesus. You shot the maid.
Does she look like she's wearing a giant white wedding dress, Emily?
Holy shit!
I had to play along so that I can get you out.
It's insane.
They think they have to kill you before sunrise. Something very bad will happen to the family.
If we don't find her and perform the ritual, we're all dead.
Found her.
God damn it! Emily!
I don't know what I'm doing!
And today's video is called Getting to Know Your Crossbow.
I forgot my gun.
Why don't you just use mine?
Mr. Ladomus, I just saw her running.
Oh my God!
Oh, fuck your fucking family!
You're just another sacrifice.
Do you think this is a fucking game?
Yes, hide and seek. Remember? They wanted to get married.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh man, sorry. Oh man, I thank you so much, Todd, for finding the Red Band trailer. because that is not high art at all. It's definitely not like the upper echelons of cinematic like snobbery, but it was such a good time in the theater. Like, and it's a lot of, it reminded me a lot of like Cabin in the Woods or Tucker and Dale versus Evil, with like blending like just over the top, just like cringe comedy with like legit gore. So not horror in like the scary sense. I mean, I've never married into a family, so I can't super relate to that. I also don't look anywhere near as badass in a ripped wedding dress with a bandolier strapped across my boobs, but it is so much fun, and it was so dark. And even the third act, which was a little hammy and got a little tropey towards the end, it still, I think, was buoyed by the rest of the film. It was just fun. It was kind of like old fashioned, just kind of like turn your brain off and enjoy like the ridiculousness for 90 minutes.
Don't forget the tennis shoes for those who want to dress up as.
I was kind of
Can't forget the
sad that it
tennis
didn't
shoes.
do
Those
better
are-
in the box office. Because if that was a smash or like a sleeper hit, then like all the cosplay would have been great at every con. Like just going out, like maybe there'd be like 3 less Harley Quinns, just a few more like Ready or Not brides walking around. Not there's anything wrong with Harley Quinn, but just saying that would have been really groovy.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much stolen all the films that I would, because yeah, Ready or Not I absolutely loved. It's very blunt and brutal in its messaging. And I absolutely loved it for it. Like it goes for it. It gets really ridiculous and hammy and fun, but it has a lot of fun with the gore and just the setting, everything I loved about that film. So I guess I'll just mention briefly the one other horror film that I really dug from this year was Midsommar, which I thought did, like, as a follow-up for Ari Aster. A lot of people thought it's a little bit underwhelming, but for how much it tries to tap into within like this weird cult and trying to focus on aspects of loss and spirituality and sexuality, and exploring all this in very weird and downright uncomfortable ways throughout Midsommar. I just love the way they built up the unease throughout. It was just like and Florence Pugh just has like just this amazing sense of seeming to be, like on the verge of both an epiphany and tears all at the same time throughout this film. That it's just I found it like very almost kind of like unpredictable, even when I kind of sensed where this was all heading towards. Like you know that this cult's up to no good, and that nothing good is probably going to come from this, and yet in some weird way it seems that something kind of content comes from the end in some weird kind of like almost unexplainable way, that someone has the sensation of closure towards it. So I'm gonna say we probably shouldn't play the clip, because like the Red Band trailer for Ready or Not is probably good. I don't think there's a Red Band trailer for Midsommar, but we probably should show that one.
We've got it if you want it.
Just saying, there's some. No, I think we'll spare everyone. So I think just for genuine surprise, if anyone's interested in it, you can seek it out. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about the the air of unpredictability, because yeah, it does. While kind of the trajectory of the plot feels like what's happening, the emotional beats, I just had no idea where it was headed, and it was really interesting where they landed. And Ari, in both this and Hereditary, Ari Aster's depiction of grief and trauma and kind of working through those feelings is so fascinating. Yeah, that movie, while leaving the theater, a woman probably in her 70s very clearly didn't have any idea what she was getting into when she went to the movie, because we were walking out and she just looked at me and she was like, "That was sick." And it's like, yeah.
You know what? Bless those.
Did you
old
know that was
folks who
gonna
just
happen?
wander in.
Well,
bless them for just wandering into films cold. I gotta give them credit for that. Yeah, especially since you know that there is going to be closure to it, but in a sense there kind of is about coming to terms with grief, but not in the way you expect too. Like the resolve emotionally you expect, but the journey and the result of it is way unexpected. That even towards the end, it almost kind of seems like just like a brief epiphany that comes just at the last moment. So yeah, that completely threw me in that film. Okay, let's see. I just went through just like a few just quick genres here. Like we could probably pretty much like fire through like a few of these. So like I know this might be like a tricky one and a bit of a contentious one, but I'll just throw it out there. We'll go through what was our favorite comic book movie of last year. So this might be a little bit, I know it's probably getting a little bit trickier, maybe a little bit tribal, but we'll see where it goes here. So Kelsey, what was your favorite comic book movie of last year?
Okay, so I was like looking through the list of all the ones that came out, and I don't know that I had one that I was just like, yes, this one like is my favorite. So I guess if I had to pick one, I would go with Spider-Man Far From Home, just because it had such a tricky line to walk in terms of being the one that came right after Avengers Endgame, and having to kind of follow up on this big epic narrative conclusion with your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who is now your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I'll pick it as my favorite because it just Tom Holland is always so charming, and the cast of that movie just seemed like they were having a great time. Jake Gyllenhaal as like a goofy villain was what I never knew I needed to see, and now I need to see it 1,000. I need to see like him doing that exact role 1,000 more times. So that's my pick.
Yeah, one interesting element I think that I really liked about Far From Home is that as a follow-up to Endgame, not only does it play off of like the events of Endgame, but I think it plays off the perception that, okay, within like this Marvel Cinematic Universe now, people are used to heroes and they're used to villains. So when you have a villain who can kind of realize that mindset of the public and kind of play it up more, I mean, we saw bits and pieces of that in like Iron Man 3. But in Far From Home, I kind of like the way that it's like more manipulated as in more of like kind of like a grander kind of like almost, like the bigger illusion of it too. So yeah, I really like the way that they played with that and the way it just throws you for a loop about what the next Spider-Man's going to go into. So yeah, I really like the way it shook it up after Endgame. I mean, how do you follow up Endgame? Well, you have to do something even more daring. And I kind of feel like Spider-Man did that.
The Spider-Man Far From Home trailer is about to play, but if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame yet, stop watching because there's some serious spoilers about to come up. But if you have seen Avengers Endgame, enjoy the trailer.
Everywhere I go, I see his face. I just really miss him.
Yeah, I miss him too. I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after he was gone.
You gonna be the next Iron Man now?
Well, no, I don't have time. I'm too busy doing your jobs.
Oh.
I'm kidding. Look, keep up the good work. Because I am going on vacation.
Heads up, Nick Fury's calling you.
I don't really want to talk to Nick Fury.
Answer the phone.
Why?
Because if you don't talk to him, then I have to talk to him. I don't want to talk to him. You sent Nick Fury to voicemail?
I gotta go.
You do not ghost Nick Fury.
What up, dorks? What's up? We're just talking about the trip.
I'm here in St. Marco Polo.
Oh, I think MJ really likes me.
That reminds me when I first fell in love.
You're a very difficult person to contact, Spider-Man. This is Mr. Beck.
We could have used someone like you on my world.
Your world? Beck is from Earth, just not ours. The snap to our hole in our dimension.
You're saying there's a multiverse?
We have a job to do, and you're coming with us.
There's gotta
be someone else you can use. What about Thor?
Off-world.
Captain Marvel? Unavailable. But I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Bitch, please, you've been to space.
What do you want, Peter? I want to go back on my trip with the girl who I really like and tell her how I feel. MJ, I
am Spider-Man.
No, of course I'm not.
I mean, it's kind of obvious.
You're right, you may not be ready, but this is my responsibility. Saving the world requires sacrifice. Sometimes people die.
Oh my God. I just always feel like I'm putting my friends in danger. The world needs the next Iron Man.
You going to step up or not?
Out of here! Get on the jet! Who are you? I work with Spider-Man. You work for Spider-Man? I work with Spider-Man, not for Spider-Man. New plan!
Yeah.
I liked too that it answered a few of the questions that kind of the snapshot of Infinity War and Endgame brought up of like, how does school work when you're nowhere for 5 years? But yeah, it was fun, and I'm excited to find out that we'll get J.K. Simmons back for Spider-Man 3.
Very much looking forward to that. All right, so Ryan, what's your favorite comic book film of 2019?
So by far my favorite from the last year was Shazam. I think that one of the things that I liked the most about it was the fact that it seemed very willing to make fun of the silliness of its genre and combine that with the awkwardness of adolescence. I mean, basically, it's a superhero movie version of Big. And I feel like it kind of has that same 80s kind of sense of humor to it. And like, it's definitely not perfect. Like, I think the villains are kind of bland and their whole thing doesn't entirely make sense, but it keeps its focus on the characters, and I just found it relentlessly charming. I just I laughed a lot, and I felt a lot of just self-contained superhero movies where it could exist entirely on a vacuum, all on its own. Like, I know that there's that cameo at the end, but like, for the most part, it's a standalone story. You could never see that character again, and you would get everything that you need out of it. And also, it's just, I mean, it's just kind of a sweet story about a kid who with trauma who learns to trust people again. And I think it's the kind of thing that drew me to these sorts of stories when they were new, and I found them really interesting. So I really enjoyed that. And I can't remember if I submitted a clip for it.
You did.
But, oh, sweet.
You've run from foster homes in 6 counties. I can take care of myself. When you're 18, give these people a chance, because that's what they're giving you.
This is Billy Batson. Make sure you make him feel at home.
They seem nice, but don't buy it. It's real Game of Thrones around here. Dude, just messing around. You look at me and you're like, why so dark? You're a disabled foster kid. You've got to...
We lost that. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Anyway, I liked that film. So it was one of the big surprises for me in movie going last year. And I think it's interesting to me that I would never have believed like 3 years ago that on average I've definitely enjoyed DC films more than Marvel movies recently. Definitely would have considered myself a Marvel fan, but I feel like I don't know if it's just that DC failed so badly that they realized that they just had to do something fundamentally different than what Marvel was doing. But each of their films, kind of starting with Wonder Woman, they've told like very different stories with very different tones, and I think it's brought something to the genre that is maybe kind of cut into the monotony of so many different superheroes and made them stand out and be more entertaining individual stories, at least for me.
Yeah, I think that's very much like the route that DC is going now. Is that since it seems like they've semi-abandoned the whole like DCEU at this point, to just sort of make films within like their own genre, which I kind of feel like Marvel has been doing, but kind of like low key. So I feel like DC might have been like taking something from Marvel, like the lesser seen element, which is like you make different kinds of films. Like you can make like heist pictures, you can make gritty character studies, you can make just flat out fun superhero films. They don't all have to interconnect. They can all be their own thing, and they can kind of like grow from there. And that's very much what I liked about Shazam. It felt like a very big breath of like fresh air, after keeping like the DCEU so locked into its own timeline and contained. Now you can actually explore, and you can have it sort of loosely connect to all like the other stuff, and just kind of like come and go as it pleases. So yeah, and Shazam was a big surprise for, I think, the crowd I saw with was just in love with this film. Like they were reacting. Like I mentioned, there's a story about like a kid got so excited when found out that Billy was impervious to bullets, and the scene where we get to see like most of, or if not like all of the Marvel family, everyone just cheered in the theater, which I've rarely seen in like a DC film. So that was quite the sight. Definitely. So yeah, do you want to go to Aaron? What's the best superhero film of 2019?
Yeah, a little bit different. I mean, I dug all the MCU. I've loved the DCEU since Man of Steel. Man of Steel is still my favorite Superman adaptation of all time. But my favorite of 2019 was Glass by M. Night Shyamalan. I loved Unbreakable. I thought Unbreakable, and still think Unbreakable is probably quite possibly one of, if not the best superhero film ever released. And I thought I was nervous going to Glass because I thought at first, based on the trailers and even the kind of Easter egg scene at the end of Split, I was like, oh no, this is just somebody else trying to jump on this sort of like cinematic universe bandwagon. Don't do this. And so I was pleasantly surprised when Glass turned out to be just, in my opinion, amazing. So well done, so understated. And I remember back in Burton's Batman, so like 88, 89, they're like, oh, Batman's getting like, this is like a realistic take on the Dark Knight. And then of course that kind of echoed with the Chris Nolan trilogy of Batman. But I always thought that Unbreakable, and then especially with Glass, that was a much more grounded, realistic take on the superhero mythos if it was actually to occur. Like that's what superheroes would be like. So you still have the superpowers, you still have supervillains, but there's all these shades of gray. It's not white hat, black hat. And the fact that the real villains, so without spoilers, or can we do spoilers? I guess we could do spoilers. So the real villain of being like Sarah Paulson's character, kind of running this organization that's been tracking people with abnormal abilities and trying to like, put them down. Even though they're clearly the antagonists of the film, they're not really bad. They're sort of like Lex Luthor in the comics. They're very justified. Like we can't just have people with these abilities just running around unchecked. We need to protect the people who don't have abilities. And so you kind of like
And mostly back.
What?
Hey guys, we're back.
Hello. So we were talking about Glass, I think. Yeah, I just want to agree with what you were saying about Unbreakable. Unbreakable was definitely one of those films that when I first saw it, it was one of those movies that made me care about film in the first place.
Although you
and I
saying,
still think,
"Hey guys, we're back," did come through since you had them up on the screen.
Maybe we should cut it.
Okay.
All right, we've lost Mark. I'm gonna cut it.
Well, I think we left off on Aaron. You were talking about Glass. Did you want to talk a little bit more about Glass?
Sure. I mean, it was my favorite superhero film of 2019. I thought that M. Night Shyamalan kind of curbed his uh, less entertaining traits, and even broke his own mold, where he has that kind of M. Shyamalanian thing that he does, where he loves to have the twist, which worked well early in his career in his filmography, but then got kind of tiresome and felt almost like a one-trick pony, sort of a fallback shortcut. But with Glass, he wrote and directed a great, just solid picture, and he balanced the characters nicely, crossing between Unbreakable and Split, and it was a very adult superhero film, not in terms of like nudity or profanity, but in terms of the themes. And again, playing with the whole notion of like, yeah, there's not really good or bad. There are protagonists and antagonists, and those are really based on the perspective of who the story is focusing on, rather than any topics of morality or right and wrong. It's just sort of like, here are these people that are doing these things, all of which to them feel justified, some of which the audience agrees with, some you might not, but you can kind of see each perspective. And so I thought it just made for really engrossing, engaging. And again, the performances were great. The special effects were subtle enough to feel more realistic. And yeah, if you didn't see it, or were worried that it was another M. Night Shyamalan kind of paint by numbers, okay, here's like sort of like the Christian allegories, and then there'll be the big twist ending. It didn't have any of that. And so I really, really, really enjoyed it, a lot more than I thought I would going into it.
All right, nice. Yeah, it's good to see like Shyamalan back, not working on such like bigger pictures, but like stuff that feels a little bit not quite more like grounded, but just like not like it seems like there's too much writing on it. So yeah, that was a little bit refreshing to see from him. And I guess since everyone's mentioned, I'm sure like a lot of people already have admiration for it. But like a lot of the comic book movies mentioned here, I've absolutely loved. But I guess I'll just throw in like Avengers Endgame as well, only because I think it did such an interesting job of trying to bring together like all these different films, but at the same time make it a very personal film where it felt like it was trying to finally bring to a head, Captain America and Iron Man, and their clashing philosophies and their unresolved issues to the forefront in a film which has a lot going on. So the fact that they could focus on that, and still with like Infinity War, the way they would end on like a more poignant note. I mean, to end the film with a slow dance instead of like like the big like triumphant ending that we've seen in like like Age of Ultron or the other Avengers films. I thought was a pretty interesting touch. It felt like this film could explore a lot more with with the MCU, and give a little bit more exploration into just a few more elements before they eventually just either evaporate or just retreat on to Disney Plus or wherever they go from here. So to pull all that off and still have like this poignant end to to the clashing philosophies of Cap and Iron Man, I thought was a really interesting way to bring that film to a close. Especially since like we've already got like Infinity War, like I kind of look at it like Kill Bill, like Infinity War, we got the meetups and the beat ups, and then in part two we actually get to explore a little bit more about the characters, understand them, and bring closure to them, while still delivering on all the fights that we've come to expect from these films. So yeah, I think that at this point we should we'll close it out here. So I guess I'll let each panelist have the last word that they want to get in here. So Kelsey, anything you want to
add? Sorry, the last like few minutes I couldn't see or hear anyone, so I just got back in. Just in terms of anything else on anything else on movies, or just like parting words?
Either or, yeah.
I'm on Twitter at Kelswid. Sorry for any just like me looking down at my phone the last 5 minutes trying to figure out what was going on. It's been great to talk to all of you. I mean, obviously with everything going on, haven't met any of you in person. But it was good to meet you virtually.
Definitely. All right, Ryan, do you have anything you want to say?
I want to get I'd like to get in one last film before we go. Just one that I really wanted to talk about, which was it's an animated film called I Lost My Body. It's on Netflix. And the premise of the film is that there's a young man who goes through a tragedy, like loses his hand, and his hand becomes sentient and kind of wanders through the streets of Paris without him. And I think it's just this really beautiful film about how people recover from trauma, but it's structured kind of like a lot of animated films that I grew up loving, kind of like those Don Bluth animated films like Land Before Time and An American Tail. And it was a film that I really loved. And so as a final note, you should watch that on Netflix.
Very, very unorthodox film, and I'm glad that Netflix took a chance on that. Yeah, every so often these years we get like a little indie animated film that will kind of like rise up out of the woodwork, and I'm glad that in 2019 something like that came about. It was actually very, very profound and very weird at the same time. I actually loved it. So yeah, Aaron, any last words?
Yeah, I'll do a quick recommendation. Dr. Sleep it kind of came and went. It's a sequel to The Shining, and I know that 2019 wasn't exactly kind to Stephen King adaptations. I mean, Pet Sematary was horrible, and Chapter 2 was just overlong and padded, but at the same time too fast and lots of plot holes. But Dr. Sleep is almost as good as his predecessor. Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson, fantastic film. If you like Stephen King, or you just like kind of good atmospheric kind of horror thrills and a killer ghost story with some supernatural elements, Dr. Sleep was really awesome. And then I guess parting words, definitely look for and support the smaller films. Like the last couple of years, a lot of my favorite movies haven't gotten the big media pushes, like as far as like trailers and press junkets. They just kind of came to the theaters and disappeared. I find them by accident because I go to the movies all the time, and I follow movies online, different blogs and websites, and awesome critics like our awesome mod Mark and stuff like that for recommendations. But there's some really great films over the last few years, like Assassination Nation and Freaks and Captive State, which I mentioned tonight. These are just a tiny, tiny tip of the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg for all this great cinema that's out there. And definitely once we're back to whatever normal will be. Highly recommend support your local theaters. Get out there. Because Hollywood is a lot of things. They're kind of sexist, kind of racist, very homophobic and transphobic. But above all, they're super greedy and they just go where the money's at. So vote with your dollars and tell the studios, these are the movies we want, or else they won't make them anymore. And that would be a shame.
Mm-hmm. And especially now is very much like the opportune time. A lot of independent theaters are actually offering smaller films that you can watch at home. Like you've noticed, like a lot of big Hollywood films are going for VOD releases. Well, you know, that's the big, like kind of like the surprise for a lot of people. Independent and smaller films have been doing VOD for years now, and now is like a great time to both catch up on them and also support them through independent independent film theaters are offering these streaming, and you can also catch them on other VOD sites. So yeah, it's worth it, and you know they rely on a lot of word of mouth. So that's that's the big thing. If you really like films and you're sick and tired of the bigger films, seek out the smaller films, and if with enough word of mouth, and we've mentioned quite a few here tonight, a lot of smaller films that kind of just slid under the radar and either just didn't get a lot of press or didn't get a big box office or just didn't get any attention at all. Stuff like Fast Color, and we briefly mentioned stuff like Freaks and Captive State, all this stuff that just slid under the radar. It's like that's one of the most beneficial things I think that it helps that we're gathered here today to talk about film and to bring up these titles so that everyone can experience it. Especially like that Sword for Truth. I have not seen that film, so now I definitely want to check it out now. So yeah, this has been a great panel. I want to thank everyone for contributing here. It has been quite a stream. So yeah, I absolutely love this. So I'm not quite sure how we close it out, but yeah, thanks everyone for watching.